go back. Come on, you can't blame me for all this.
Oh, I can. And I will. And I do. I blame you for everything, Chuck. It's all your fault. I'm blaming you for the ozone layer, global warming, the price on gas. It's all your fault. So get off my property, get out my face, and get out my life.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you going?
It's Bartlomiej. And I'm doing well, Ryan. How are you?
Oh.
No, for this episode, I'm Bartlomiej.
You know in Lovecraftian books where they describe how they've seen the creature and it's made them go mad upon its just sight?
Yeah, they're really wimpy. Go on.
That's how I'm feeling today. I'm feeling like I've seen something that has turned my mind into Swiss cheese.
Seen with your ears.
Oh, let's just go.
Unless there's something you're not telling me about my appearance.
Yeah. Bartek just is making me go, it's the beard. It's right in my eyes. It's getting into my brain and giving me funky feelings.
But the microphone's in the way. And the filter.
And the pop filter. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bartek, for
Bartlomiej.
Introducing Spit and Polish Presents Likingly, because we're always spitting and... Come on, finish the sentence.
We
and...
both happen to be Polish, and specifically it's the show PP, Pictures Powwow.
The original PP.
Take that, Pokemon.
Take that, Pokemon, which is just one P, right?
Oh, no, I'm talking like in the games, like PP is like the PowerPoints.
Yes, sorry, yes.
It's how many times you can use a move before you have to recover.
we only have a few moves to give you, which is say the show's name. We've done that. The show is where we talk about a movie that's come recommended. I've just done that. The person that recommended it was you, the listening people. Lance, one of our YouTube commenters, commented that we should do this movie.
Mm-hmm.
What movie are we in fact doing? We're doing Are We Done Yet? From 2007?
I think so. I think it's 2007, yeah.
Okay. Ooh, phew. Worried. We're still in the Bush years. Okay, so then the other step is we have a guest that's joining us. Our Ice Cube expert of him in family films.
Yes, we didn't have him for the last Listening People's Choice.
That wasn't a family film.
No.
That wasn't a family film. But we do have worldwide Will is here again. Will, you are back. How are you going?
Hello, listening people. I'm back. I was feeling good, but something has disappointed me, guys.
Yeah.
I know, me too.
What disappointed me, guys, is you credited the listening person who selected this Lance, but only his first name. You didn't say Lance Jackson. Like, come on. He's famous. You got to get the whole thing in there.
Police, if you're listening, there's the name.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Lance. We won't fuck it up again, mate.
Lance.
This is your last recommendation.
I beg your forgiveness,
you're right.
Lance.
It is your last recommendation, Lance, because this may be the last episode of the show because you've killed one of the hosts. Me. Okay, let's get real, as David Lynch would say. Let's get real.
Well, he didn't say let's, did he?
He said get real, but we should get real. Like, let us get real. Okay. Are we done yet? 2007.
No, we just started.
Starring, Ice Cube, Nia Long, John C. McGinley, and others.
Yeah, Joker from Next Friday is in this.
I noticed that. Okay. If you've not seen the film...
You should see the film.
Welcome to the many, many people who haven't. To get into the histories, of course, we're going to be spoiling this, so you are warned. To get into the histories with this, I'll rattle off mine very quickly.
Just edit in the histories from Are We There? It's going to be the same.
No. It may have changed. Will may have watched in the interim. I have seen this movie. You two have never seen this movie, correct?
That's correct.
That is 100% correct.
What was your history with the first one, Will? You'd never seen it? Or you had?
No,
he saw it in the cinema.
We had seen it, I think, in the pictures, though. I hadn't thought about it probably since that day.
Right. So basically, when we started that first episode, like, you and I had seen the first one, right? I'd only seen the second one.
I'm not
Yeah.
even sure if until Ryan mentioned this when we did the first one on the podcast, I'm not sure if I even knew this one existed.
Okay.
Oh, brother.
I knew it existed, but I knew nothing
I'm
about it.
still not quite sure what state of existence it or I am in after watching it.
It's in one of those nether realms. I saw this in school, in high school. It was a classic, the school term has come to an end. We are going to do nothing for the lesson, just throw something on. I think it was like in year 8. Year
2007
9.
would have been year 8. Yeah.
Yeah, year 8, year 9, and I was doing I'm trying to remember what the class was. I know what room I was in, but I'm trying to recollect what class I would have had. Isn't that the funny thing with memory? Like, I can remember the classroom I'm in, but not the class that room was for.
So it's probably not PE.
No, it wasn't. It was for what do you call it? Like doing
health?
crafts. Like
Arts?
sewing. No, like sewing and stitch work and all of that. We had that as a class.
Okay.
God, I'm forgetting the name of it. But that general thing of like, hey guys, here's a sewing machine. Go, off you go. Create a mitten. And so we whacked that on, and it was bizarre. I didn't know about the first film. I didn't know this was a sequel film.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I saw the beginning of it where he kind of sets it up like, you know, it's me again, and here's our situation. I didn't know. I just was unaware.
Yeah.
I had seen Ice Cube in movies before, like Friday After Next, which this made me think of because of the animated opening credits sequence, which Friday After Next had as well.
Yeah, it did.
And I saw the film in its entirety, and I forever was changed because this felt like a mad fever dream. This didn't feel like a real movie, yet
you talked about it over the years. Yeah,
it was like looking into what is a normal film. Like, you've seen the pitch of this done so many times so well in other places, whether it's Green Acres, the television series. Obviously, I found out in this watch, this is based on an old Cary Grant movie. It lists that in the opening credits.
Yeah, that threw me off.
I've never seen that film, so I can't speak to that. But like Funny Farm starring Chevy Chase, also similar to this, where it's like city person moves to the country. They have a fixer-upper house, and the local community around them is both supportive but alienating and weird. And are they conning them? Are they tricking them? Blah, blah, blah. We all know this. We've seen some variant of this, or we're familiar with this.
It's also got a bit of like a You, Me, and Dupree kind of thing of like the much better guy who's like swaying the family, whereas the main character is struggling to prove himself. Or something like that.
We've all seen the storyline of the parent who is absentee from the family and all the hijinks because they're trying to work and get the money and get the magazine up in time. Like RV starring Robin Williams, the film Runaway Vacation, where he uses this vacation so that he can actually detour his family to the meeting that he needs for work, and he isn't telling them, and it's a secret being held. And I've seen this film so many times, but when I viewed it at that teenage viewpoint of like, it's a Friday afternoon, I just want to go home. There's at least Dr. Cox from Scrubs. I love that guy. The usual formula that all of these have are being used here, but also it's like the formula has gone off. It's been left in the sun too long. It's gone bitter. It's gone peculiar and mutated into some other strain of this type of movie. And I've latched onto that for years and years and years. And I'm very proud to say that after viewing the first movie, where the first movie was similar in that regard, but for kids' films, like the road trip family comedy, where it was normal-ish, but slightly off.
I remember we did have a lot of conversations about how, like, this also has like a structure that we recognize from like kids' films, but it also, you even used the term fever dream for that film because there were just all these things that were a little too weird.
Right. And so I'm proud to announce to everybody here that the film was as weird and as bizarre and as nightmarish and whiplash-inducing as I recalled it to be. you guys had this build up ahead of you from our last episode discussion on Are We There Yet? You guys walked into this kind of with that in your brain, with me being like, this is fucking nuts and weird and it's so different from the first film, yet not really. So that was kind of what you guys walked in with, but tell me, what was it like coming into this?
Well, the main thing that I remember you talking about, and maybe I've mixed this up with another film, I seem to recall you mentioning that this film or some film, that gave you a similar reaction had a thing where it seemed like the main character was the only one who ever interacted with this really weird character.
So John C. McGinley, yes. My recollection was, it's not that it's the only one, it's more like it almost feels like he's not real, John C. McGinley. Like the version that our character sees is so different to the version everybody else sees. And I stick by that, by the way. I stick by that.
Yeah, I guess me just misinterpreting that, because like when we first met this character, I'm like, oh, this guy is crazy. This must be the guy Ryan was talking about. But everyone else is talking to him too. So no, it must be someone else that's weirder than this. So it kind of threw me off when the film ended, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess maybe I was just misremembering what Ryan said.
Yeah. But how was it for you?
Yeah, it was really interesting, wasn't it?
Is that your nice way of saying bad?
I like the way you described it with, like, this seems like a mutated, like a perverted version of, like, this kind of film where it was going through all of these familiar, tropes and plot points. In a way, I think I was, like, asking myself, like, do I say that this film was really focused and on topic or all over the place? Like, I'm still kind of struggling, because, like, when you look at it, it's like, okay, every scene that happens is, like a comedy set piece in a way, with one of these types of story scenes where, ironically, in Next Friday, you're saying like, oh, Ice Cube, Big Ego needs to be the butt of the jokes. But then in these, in the Are We franchise, he is the butt of the joke in like every single scene.
Right.
And yeah, and with that in mind, like, this is the point of the franchise, this film succeeds. Like, he is the butt of every single scene. Every scene, is focused on the renovation. Like, we do not see
the kids.
We'll
the main characters.
We'll get to that.
Previous film.
No. I agree with that. But the main point I was getting at is, like, they've moved to the countryside, but like,
we don't see the community. We never leave that fucking property.
That's literally it. Until like the end, where like he calls John C. McGinley. That's like the only.
I couldn't believe that John C. McGinley actually had a house. Like I knew that happened, but like it was so isolated here in this one place. To cut away to John C. McGinley's house and that it's nice felt almost unrealistic. Like, again, he feel like he should be living in that caravan.
He was living on a street with like many houses.
The fact that that's in the movie feels... Yeah. No, I don't want to pull it too early. I just will say this, because we'll get to it. This will be a big topic point, but he is John Candy from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That's who John C. McGinley was. And guess what John Candy didn't have? A house or a home. He just traveled from place to place. And that's what I really connected with. And I went, this doesn't seem right. Like, we cut to his house and he has the fact he has a closet is unrealistic.
Before we pull that trigger.
Before we pull the pin.
The point I was making was, was this film entirely focused on its plot, or was it all over the place? And that's just one of the elements of, like, it's focused on the house renovation. And once we get to the house, we very rarely ever leave it.
Will, you walked in.
Maybe to go fishing.
You walked in knowing that I talk this up as kind of like a crazy, bizarre experience for myself. How was it for you?
Well, basically, I'm going into it, and the only thing I really remembered from our discussions about it is, like, I think you mentioned, like, it's almost all in one location. Which is definitely the case. It is almost all at the house and the property.
Unlike the last film, which was like in multiple locations.
Yeah, it was
and it has like a weird feeling. And I've sort of like I watched it last night. I've slept on it, and I've kind of been gathering my thoughts throughout the day. And I hate to say it, I like still can't quite put into the words the quality of this. This film has a something going on that makes it feel very strange.
That's what this recording session is about.
Because you know what this is supposed to be. It's not that bizarre.
Yeah.
It is obvious what this family film is supposed to replicate and reintroduce to this generation and rip off, if you will, or just do. But you can't get your fingers on it. Like, you can't grip onto it. You just keep slipping, and then you slip into fucking weirder territories, and you're like, now I don't recognize this, because the film is one of those where it's too lazy to have rules, but then will weirdly enforce rules. And it's like, guy, you gotta pick. Are you like one of those cartoony universes or not? And then to give the
opening credits are.
Yeah, to give John Hughes. Yeah. John Hughes is a big influence on this. I mentioned Planes, Trains. Another film I would say this is mostly ripping off is The Great Outdoors, starring John Candy and Dan Aykroyd, in which the pitch of that is this family get together. There's the poorer family, the more common folk, the John Candy side, and Dan Aykroyd, who's like the city rich asshole. He has the old school phone, and they meet up at the cabin that they have near the lake, and they're getting back together about family, and when you know it, the cabin's fallen to shit. They've got to kind of repair it. Oh, there's raccoons that eat their trash, and they have to deal with the raccoons. There's this legend about a grizzly bear out there. There's a guy in town who's been struck by lightning 50 times. And Hughes stuff, as we've talked about with Baby's Day Out, and we always talk about with Planes, Trains, and then Great Outdoors, they can present as normal. But then they would have their weird little moments where it's like Planes, Trains famously has my favorite gag where it's like normal,
thing,
and then he sees John Candy at the airport, and he then visualizes the cab door, just the door in front of John Candy, and John Candy reenacts the reaction he had earlier. And it's so weird. Or when they're in the car and he sees John Candy as Satan and he's laughing. Abstract, weird, bizarre.
No one looking down in Baby's Day Out.
But but it doesn't undercut the rules of the movie. It's a weird balancing act. Here, the raccoon talks, and I almost died. I couldn't believe that happened, and then it stopped happening.
No, that was believable because we already had the screaming fish.
Was that before the screaming fish?
I feel like that was no. I'm saying that was after.
The raccoon was before the screaming fish, but
was it?
I feel a little unstuck in time.
How long was this movie? Like, how long did this movie take? Because she's like about to give birth at as soon as they move into the house, and then it feels like 4 years pass before she does give birth.
The thing with this movie is, in some ways, it is the generic family-friendly comedy from this era you're expecting, but there is just some bizarre, shadowy thing that is here.
His name is John C. McGinley as Chuck.
Well, that's a head of it, but there is other things as well, and I just can't quite. I'm getting little glimpses out of the corner of my eye, but I can't quite see.
Here's my big complaint. Here's what makes the movie a failure if it's trying to be these things. Funny Farm, Planes, Trains. Funny Farm has Chevy Chase. Planes, Trains has Steve Martin. Both comedians are very, very adept and very skilled at playing the common man, or the head of the family, or the guy who's at the center of all of this kerfuffle. And they deserve it, yet they don't. You know what I mean by that? Like, Steve Martin in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles gets everything he like put upon him because he deserves it. But at the same time, he's a reasonable enough man where he shouldn't have this happen, but he's also smarmy and smug and selfish and egotistical and he's a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Chevy Chase is Chevy Chase, where Chevy Chase plays an asshole, and he's always making smarmy comments. So when he gets shit on in the narrative, it's funny because he does deserve it. Ice Cube is capable of this, but throughout the entire runtime, I was pulling out, when I'm taking it seriously as a film, I'm pulling my hair out because it fails at this, which is, it doesn't disprove him being right. In Planes, Trains, you may relate to Steve Martin, you may get on his side, but it shows you that he's wrong. at many points, and that John Candy is right. And John Candy isn't being malicious ever in that movie. He's just who he is. And Steve Martin being unaccepting is a character flaw. Here, I was just on Ice Cube's side the entire time, and I was against the movie when the movie was saying he needs to change and that he is wrong. That is his big flaw for me. He doesn't have that snarkiness and that selfishness to warrant you, the viewer, getting satisfaction of him getting his own and then mocking him and laughing him and him being the butt of the joke. And he is making so many fucking valid points that everyone else around him comes across as the antagonist. His wife is the antagonist, the kids are the antagonist, everyone's the antagonist, and not in a fun way for me. Like I was just like, he's fucking right. Movie, stop saying the protagonist is wrong. You are wrong. Leave the guy alone.
It is this kind of thing also where, one of the big things about John C. McGinley, especially early on, is, there's the running joke that he's like every specialist in...
I wish they kept pushing that.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like early on. And you get this whole, eccentric quirk of his where, I have to wear the hat or the uniform of the job. And then I'm just in that mode. I'm the inspector and I'm being mean. I'm going to fine you. And then I happen to have my construction hat. So I put it on and I'm like, oh man, they're really bureaucrats bleeding you dry kind of thing. And by the end of the film, like we don't really expand on that eccentricity too much.
No.
And we never really get sort of like an explanation of like, okay, did John C. McGinley have a certain goal in mind at first? Because at first it does kind of seem like
he's a con man.
Oh, he's like scamming him out of money. But in the end, we get this like really sympathetic thing, and it was like, oh, okay. So, they want to get along. But, in the first film, I think in our discussion, we said like, oh, they barely established this thing. Later on in the film, we discover that Ice Cube also had a, runaway parent.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, and he's kind of projected some of his traumas onto this. Whereas with the John C. McGinley character in this, we didn't really get a resolution to that. We kind of got the thing of like, oh, his wife died and he's lonely.
Right.
But was the eccentricities and like seeming like he's scamming him his way of combating that loneliness?
It's them trying to have their cake and eat it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There's two distinct characters from John C. McGinley, that funny comedy character and that forced manipulative emotional character. See, again, sorry, but this really did rip from Planes, Trains, and if you do that, you're going to get a whole can of whoop ass because that's one of the greatest comedy films ever made. And one of the reasons it's great is because it pulls off sincerity. And they're more than just comedy characters. They're people. And John Candy in that film wasn't just the quirky comedy character that John C. McGinley is at this. There was a mixing of the real and the comedy character. So when you did have the tear-jerking moments, they were earned. They didn't feel artificial. They didn't feel like they came out of nowhere or that they were plugged in or stitched on to fill this out. Well, here it is John C. McGinley is playing wacky comedy character who might as well be friends with Lionel Hutz from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And then they try to make him like, no, he's a real guy. But then they go right back to him being the comedy guy. You can't have it both ways. You have to blend it. They don't. It's
this weird thing of like, oh, if you could enter the universe, like John C. McGinley at the end of the film, completely sincere. You can have an honest conversation with him. If you asked him the question of like, so what was up with you, seeming like you were scamming me early on in the film, the writer would then say like, oh no, film's done.
Yeah.
We're not getting the answer to that.
I want to ask you this, Will, to go off of Bartek's point. What do you think's at the heart of this issue, this kind of dissonance here? Because it is a major aspect of the movie is John C. McGinley and how you take his character of Chuck, isn't it? It's Chuck.
Yeah, Chuck.
I mean, it is a hard thing to explain. I feel this film would be a lot more cohesive and feel a lot more normal if they either stuck with the whole, he's like, oh, he's doing a bit with like multiple different jobs and he's scamming me. And I don't know, this might be me being psychotic, but I almost got the impression in like the first few scenes he's in that he's almost like gonna make moves on his wife, which is absolutely not how the plot goes. But that is the vibe I was getting for a bit.
That's a trope from these kind of stories.
That's the fear, and that's the fear of the main character. Is there's this buff guy who's taking his place. He's becoming the dad. He's becoming the husband.
He's the one taking the kid out fishing.
He's becoming the homemaker, like the maker of the home. So it's valid. And you can do that. You can do that, but you actually have to do it.
Yeah,
it's trying to have its cake and eat it too.
It's so weird. I feel like we either needed to stick with this. He's the con artist, and maybe he's a homewrecker as well. And we keep escalating that, or he's like the lonely neighbor who is like constantly trying to make excuses to be there, but not necessarily trying to bleed him dry.
Yeah,
so you can have that and then he's like, why is this guy trying to be here all the time? It's like, oh, he's lonely.
Well, we had
pick a lane.
We had this, and you know what? Here's a reason why I pulled Lionel Hutz out of my brain. Who played Lionel Hutz?
Hartman.
Phil Hartman.
Phil Hartman. I almost said Butch.
What film have we had Phil Hartman in?
We've had him in 2 that I can think of. It was Coneheads was one of them, and the other was just a cameo in Married an Axe Murderer.
No.
There's another one?
Jingle All the Way.
Oh, of course, the third one.
And he was that in Jingle All the Way, where he was a minor side character who was intruding upon his house, and we, the audience, clearly knew why. And there was a loneliness aspect to him, like he's a widower, wasn't he in that? I think, or like he's a single father who preys upon all the women. It's a morally reprehensible thing, but we understand what he is. And so when we get the famous "put the cookie down," it's funny. While with John C. McGinley, he's a big character in the film, and you're not sure if you should take him that way or not, because it's like they're doing multiple things with him. But what Will is pointing at, that is a major thread. That is a major thread, and it does make you uncomfortable, because it's like, is this kids' film acknowledging that or not? Because in the kids' film Jingle All the Way, they did acknowledge it, so you were on board with Phil Hartman being the sleaze. But here it's like, you're uneasy. You're like, do they know or do they not? They do, but are they going to actually?
He's very touchy-feely in this.
And it's not just
it's are they going? It's not only
do they know. It's not only do they know as filmmakers. It's okay if they do know. Are they actually going to explore it any? And the answer is no. Only in the basic sense of it gives Ice Cube another reason to get mad, but it makes the wife look like a dumbass character too. The fact that she can't see it and it doesn't even come up in her brain. Like, there's so many things. I mean, let's just keep focusing on John C. and Ice Cube for the moment, because I have a whole thing to say about the rest of the family.
I just feel Christ. Like I almost can't fault the wife character for not picking up on it, because it's like, it's not actually going to be relevant in the second half of the film.
And she doesn't have a character.
It kind of vanishes. And it's like, I don't know.
With the Chuck character, I need to phrase this in a way that doesn't make it sound like a compliment or an insult to myself. But I'm
curious what you're going to say.
Yeah, I'm
Did
curious.
You like him?
Well, this is what I'm trying to get to. So early on in the film, when, you have this mystery of like, oh, he's like scamming him, like, the stuff's going on here.
The house is breaking, he throws the pieces away.
Yeah, and you're wondering like, what is this guy's deal? And I just mentioned now, and I mentioned earlier that this is something that's only really present at the start of the film.
Mm.
For whatever reason, I was in tune with this film's flow, if that makes sense.
Yes.
To where I was feeling like what they were doing and what this character was meant to be. So like early on, it was like, oh, mystery element. But once they dropped that and he was just being the nice guy who genuinely is trying to help, I understood that. I knew like, okay, he's not making a move on the wife. I understood this for some reason.
Yes.
But then it is just this monotonous thing of like, okay, like you said, reason for Ice Cube to get angry. And
it's a checklist.
It's a checklist, and it's just kind of this repeating cycle kind of thing. And I was in a way like, oh, this is the quirk now. Oh, he's doing capoeira. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in groove with it as well in some way, but then, and this is what we love And this is a part of why I love this as well. Don't get me wrong, this is an aspect I do love, but this is a family film. And some of the things he does as a character and as a performance, borderline. They are teetering on if this is inappropriate or not. And we love that. That's why I love Paul Giamatti in Big Fat Liar, because as a kid, it was thrilling to watch him do all these things that feel like they shouldn't be done in a movie for children. And John C. McGinley is doing that here. It's just him touching the belly. It does make you go, all right. And just constantly like smiling in a way where he feels like a psychotic villain from a horror film. He should be the real estate agent cousin of the family from Nothing But Trouble. Like, he feels like that, where it's like, there's something creepy about him through it. And I enjoy that, but
it's just like
I don't know if
sinister wholesomeness kind of thing.
But I don't know if the film I can't grasp if the film knows that. I think the film is in love with the quirky cartooniness of a guy who's putting on multiple personas and not recognizing them and being like Catch-22 bureaucratically circling around and making things more complicated and lying through omission a lot, and then it ratchets it up. And again, if you've seen the TV show Green Acres, this character is Mr. Haney. Mr. Haney in Green Acres was an antagonist. He was a shifty con man salesman who would make the main character's life in that show worse. And we knew that, and it was enjoyable. Here, it's like, do they actually want me to like him? Because here's the thing. I think it would work better if he's this force positive character. This optimistic bright light who knows everything. I can cure your asthma. I get on with the kids, and I da-da-da-da-da. I would be on side of the movie more if the movie itself didn't want me to like him. Because there are many movies we've covered where there's that overly perky, chirpy character that we hate because we are so in the shoes of our main character. And that it's enjoyable to hate them in a fashion, and that they are the antagonist to our cynical character. We've seen that countless times. But even in the first chunk, there were little moments where it's like, no, but don't you like this guy? And I'm like, John C. McGinley's just too energetic for my like. Outside of Dr. Cox, I mean, have you guys seen Scrubs?
No.
Yes.
Okay, so you've seen Scrubs, Will. Dr. Cox is like a normal performance. Like it's what you would expect a sitcom character to be, where it's like, he's the surly doctor who knows better than everybody else. He's a cynic, but deep down, he's a good guy. John C. McGinley gives a normal performance for what you require. Like, it's House. It's the TV show House, like, as a comedy. Like, before House came along. Like that. Like, he's like Dr. House, but it's overtly comedic. He's normal. But everything else I've ever seen John C. McGinley in, and we've done stuff with him on the show, like Highlander 2, where he was one of the antagonists. He was like the businessman. He always plays weirdos. He always plays freaks, or what should be a normal character. He delivers some bizarre twist to it, like in Office Space. We've all seen Office Space. He was one of the Bobs. Anyway, he should be playing a normal bureaucratic, like, office guy who's auditing him, but he's got this little mustache and this kind of greased Nazi hair, which also we'll talk about Germany in a moment with this movie. But
the language of discipline.
He is like rippling out of his work attire and that, like, because he's jacked, which we see here, and he's very like intense. And he puts that all here, and I don't know if it works, but I love it. It's that classic, you've cast this actor who does the thing, and you put them in a project where you go, should you have got that actor who does that thing here? Like, Academy Award nominee Paul Giamatti. Should you put him in Big Fat Liar? And the answer was a yes. A big, resounding yes. Did you like him, Will? Chuck? The performance, the character, how they treated him.
I don't want to like sort of repeat myself or repeat what you guys are saying, but it's like, I think I would have liked it a lot more, because kind of at the start we're like scammer Lionel Hutz, and then we sort of move into like Ned Flanders, and then we sort of move into sad, lonely gentleman, you know? Oh, and I guess that also covers later Ned Flanders as well. The Simpsons has gone on too long. I can't go down those.
Are you
holes.
saying that this is The Simpsons? Yes,
maybe. But I think I would have liked unhinged scammer Chuck a bit more. Once we go to like, oh, we're family, it's like, especially because that's so not what you were doing at first. It's like I think I could have liked Chuck if we stuck with unhinged scammer. Though I will say the bit where Ice Cube is like ravaged by a swarm of bats, runs out the side of his house, and Chuck just like kicks down his own door, shirtless with 2 loaded flare guns, and just lets them go. I didn't laugh in this scene. I didn't laugh in any of this movie, actually.
I laughed a lot.
I at least enjoyed that scene. You know what? If the whole film was that deranged in that way, it's like, I could be interested.
See,
so, Will, did you not like the scene where it was the Hawaiian boys' party and Ice Cube, he did the scene with the stepfather and the daughter thing, but then the scene couldn't end until we saw John C. McGinley, twirl the fire sticks and then throw it away?
He's getting the guns out a lot in this film.
We even got a Wilhelm scream.
Yeah, that was insane. Okay. Will's actually touched upon a great point here.
Yeah.
Did you find the film funny in the way that it was meant to be taken? Because I didn't. I found it funny in this is too in an ironic sense, this is going way beyond. I'm finding it funnier than it is actually trying to be. What about you? Did you actually have some genuine laughs or humorous things out of this?
It is interesting because I used to. In the last Listening People's Choice we did Next Friday, and I described that as a black comedy because, it's comedy with, a bunch of black characters, that kind of humor. And this one is a black comedy in the more general sense that we understand. Bad, dark kind of things happen. In this case, maybe not so much. It goes back to that whole idea of, the suffering of others is funny kind of thing. And the first film did that too. Are we there yet? It was basically a whole film of Ice Cube suffering at the hands of these 2 kids who are constantly scheming against him, and his car gets destroyed and he gets, attacked by the deer, things like that.
The great thing is he brought that upon himself many times.
Yeah. And in this one, like I said, every single scene is, stuff happening to him. I really felt it in the very first scene, in the condo that they lived in, where we had the kitchen scene, and every few seconds, something goes wrong. The pizza falls on his shirt, the thing falls out of the closet, gets the egg on him.
Yeah, and he just accepts it.
Yeah, and it's just constant. And that rhythm kind of kept up throughout the film. Usually there'd just be the punchline at the end of scenes. So I guess in a sense it slowed down, but yeah, it just kept happening over and over again. It's
monotonous.
You
start the movie with a Rube Goldberg type comedy set piece, and then the house is the Rube Goldberg type comedy set piece. You have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Other than seeing if John C. McGinley's character Chuck, who is so weird, how weird will he get? Is where my humor value of it escalating, because you just saying that about the apartment, I've almost completely forgot about the start of the movie. But they set up the humor in the way that it will proceed to be for the rest of the movie. It doesn't change. It doesn't evolve. It doesn't even heighten, because all this talk about the house being constructed, am I the only one who's disappointed with the lack of comedy set pieces that they did get from the house being this device that could be used for said comedy set pieces?
A lot of them were just, the thing that we touched broke. The roof he stood on broke, the wall when the hand was on the wall.
Or him being told, this thing is a problem, and him going, and that's it.
It is weird, because you'd think, in what is a fairly physical comedy about a house that is actually a ruin and they've got to fix it. It's you'd think there'd be more wacky hijinks fixing the house, but it's a lot of it's just like Bartek said, a lot of it is just, oh no, the house was beautiful, but there's something wrong with it, and now it's wrecked.
And
and now it was wrecked off screen.
Do you remember the funny gag where they used the thing and it broke?
And that happens a lot.
But here's the thing:
but not even often that big parts of the house.
No,
it was often
they set up things and don't always pay them off. So, for instance, what's the first thing that he finds wrong with the house?
It's that light that falls off when they. Oh wait, during the inspection or when
during
they
the
move
inspection?
Is it when he thumps the wall and it like
or-
spins?
No, it's
burning his hand on the
burning his hand, isn't it?
stove? Yeah.
Is it burning the hand that he first experiences? I was expecting that to become a little recurring thing where he keeps forgetting about it and he keeps,
right?
Because it's a thing but it's never touched again. And you go, oh, well, I guess they fixed it.
Well,
there's no recurring motif with that.
Maybe I didn't register that because I thought something was cooking.
No, yeah, but like in the film, you would use you're setting this up. There would be other instances where maybe the oven is on and he forgets and burns his hand and everyone else has adapted to it. Because that's the joke.
I understand that, but
I'm saying they didn't do that. And there's many moments like that. For instance, big deal about the bathroom. They did like no gags with the bathroom. Like, you got a private toilet. He sits on it. That's what sells him on being this house for him. And he's like almost crying on his own private toilet. What happened with that toilet? Did we get anything? Was there any scenarios had with that? No. Stop setting it up then. Stop glorifying it. Stop shining a spotlight on it because I, the viewer, am expecting hijinks to happen with that. I'm expecting that when he's at his low point, he'll look over and the toilet's been removed and something else has been put there. And that will be like...
And that'll be the straw that...
Yeah. Or like the more salt in the wound after his family has left. Or even the family has left and all he's got left is the toilet. The one thing, right? Because they've moved into what was his little nook down the way. And no, they don't do that. And the house thing is, okay, now I think I'm the only one who's watched the TV show Green Acres.
Yeah.
Correct? Where the pitch of that is city guy and his European wife move to the country because he's decided that he wants to do the country life. And he's an ignorant guy. Like he does farming in his suits, like his business suits with overalls and all of that. And one of the best things about that show is as the series goes along, more fucked up things happen to the house where it's like, and as somebody who grew up in a half-finished home myself, that is so satisfying to see in comedy because it's like, okay, this door won't close properly. So this happened to me in my life. Okay, this happens at my real home. The front screen door doesn't close properly. So instead of getting a new screen door because, no, we're going to keep this one and make it work, or we don't have money, or, oh, that door doesn't fit this, whatever, we would have to grab the screen door, grab its handle, and jam the handle up and then to the left to get it in to close it. Now imagine that every day of your life and you have to do it like 2 or 3 times a day, and sometimes the door will unhinge itself and open and you have to close it. That's about living the lifestyle of growing up poor, growing up in a house that's kind of, I
was thinking about your curtains thing on the way here.
The curtains thing where in my house, my family had curtains that were slightly too thin. So we would have to put sheets up in the afternoon over the curtains so the sun doesn't shine too bright. And so people can't see into our house. It's like, why don't we get new curtains? Well, Ryan, we can't get new curtains because the hooks that are installed inside the walls don't support the weight of the rods that could have the curtains that we need. And it's like, oh my God. And you get stressed. I'm getting stressed thinking about it right now. And that's the fun of Green Acres. And that's the fun of Funny Farm. And probably the fun of the original film, in which these little problems, it is you've got a sinking boat and you're just plugging up all the little holes, but there's just more holes and there's one big one sinking the boat. That should have been this. But instead, the humor of the house is just Ice Cube walks in. Oh, there's no floor now. Oh. Does that cause any major inconveniences for him? Like, does he fall in it? No. Like, does he have to get annoyed that his family has adapted? That's a missing element too. There's a shadow of this, and I want to get you guys' opinion. There's almost an essence of the humor of, and this happened in Green Acres, where the wife got used to all the annoyances and all the inconveniences and the craziness of the construction of the house. I kind of can see that here, where Ice Cube is frustrated and he feels all isolated and alone and like the only sane men in the room because the wife and the kids have adapted to it.
Yeah.
That's kind of there, right? But they don't really mind much out of it. Do you agree or no?
No, I basically do agree. I remember when I was, after I finished watching the film, obviously there was the big thing of like, oh, a huge element from the first film, the kids are now, a very minor element of it. And I was asking myself like, okay, but was there at least like a bare minimum excuse of some sort of arc going on with them? And I guess what they had was, well, you're shaking your head, but like the bare minimum excuse thing, and I'm stressing bare minimum, is like, the girl doesn't want to leave her friends and opportunities for dating, things like that, which kind of, develops when they meet the Hawaiian boy. Again, bare minimum. And with the boy, there's this sort of recurring line about having to teach him something, like a father to a son, outdoors experiences, fishing, things like that. And that gets, that's one of the things John McGinley kind of steps in and does, which, Ice Cube feels as a slight against him. So there is this, bare minimum thing going on, but it almost feels like sort of like a reversal of the first film where like, we got a lot of the kids, but little of the wife, whereas in this one, we get a bit more of the wife, but the kids are just kind of there.
And what we get is nothing of the wife either. Like what we get of her is like, I'm just going to say it. It's pretty sexist. I think the wife is just the worst type of female character you can have in your movie. One of the worst types, where I'll get into it in a moment. Will, what about you? How did you come at this kind of angle of the movie? Like the type of humor, setups, payoffs, because you didn't find it funny. Like you didn't laugh.
No, I didn't. I didn't laugh during the film. I got to agree with Ryan. I feel, and
Bartlomiej,
the two men in the room that we know of, like there was I don't know, the family felt very out of focus and just, I think Bartek phrased it well, like the bare minimum. Like they're just kind of there.
They're a check mark because it's like this is a sequel to a film where those characters existed.
I was thinking, you've already brought up this point much earlier in the episode. We haven't focused on it too much. The whole thing about this film apparently being based on an existing story. Like when I saw that in the credits, that really threw me off.
And I looked up the cast of that original film. And that film, from my understanding, had children in it and a wife character. So
yeah, but when I mix that fact with the fact that, you barely feel that this is a sequel beyond a couple of references, it almost does make sense to me why this doesn't feel as much like a children's film as the first one does.
Right.
The first one, very common thing of like, oh, the two kids, maybe young people watching the film could relate to some of their struggles.
This kid
there.
gets bullied, he has asthma, but he's smart and nobody believes in him. And oh, she has a secret talent. She can sing, but she keeps it to herself.
And again, I don't know anything about the story that this one is based on, but that kind of does give me this idea of like, oh, maybe that's why this film. I said feel and film. I was going to say feel and film in the same sentence, but I said it at the same time. Why this film feels like, it feels more adult oriented in that sense.
Right.
Like maybe there is this sort of like cultured thing of like, oh, adults will understand the comparisons to this, the three central characters, if we're counting the wife as a central character.
She has to. She's a major pushing point.
They're all adults and the kids are kind of secondary. They're satellites to everything else going on.
If this wasn't a sequel, like if this wasn't like, if they made this script without it attaching to this previous success, I would bet you that it would have just been the wife and Ice Cube, and she's pregnant. That's all you needed.
Yeah.
I bet you that's what would have happened. And I know that because a lot of these examples have that. Funny Farm is about about a couple who moved to this country town. They don't have a kid, but they're going to want one, but then they're deciding, do I want one in an environment like this? Green Acres, they're like a middle-aged couple. They don't have a kid, so you don't have to worry about that, and so on and so forth. Like, and in fact, a lot of these home reno misadventures, it's about a young couple or a freshly married couple, or even a retiree couple who are going through this new change. But this is like, you also have the kids too, and it's kind of like, it's an obligation.
I just realized, have we... I'm sure we have, and that's not my main point. Have we mentioned the pregnancy aspect yet?
Oh, the wife's pregnant with twins.
Yeah, the wife's pregnant with twins, and that's, recurring. Yeah, we mentioned like the, touching the belly, stuff like that. And that is a thing that, gets mentioned early on and, referenced throughout. Like, oh, I'm a midwife, she's doing the sessions, things like that. Eventually, when we have the, this film's equivalent of third act breakup, the
waters break.
The really low point. The water breaks after that.
Yes.
We get a line from Nia Long, the wife, something like Ice Cube is stressed about, having to become a father or something like that.
Yes.
And I guess we could, take that from some of the events of the film, but I don't feel like that was ever really a central thing.
No, it was more about his magazine.
Yeah. And so when she said that, I'm like, oh, was that meant to be something we were getting?
Another failure of the film is that. And it also ties in with, well, what do they replace it with? It's his stress about the magazine. And the stress about the magazine comes in two ways. Obviously, the most superficial, which is money. Money to sustain their lifestyle, money to be happy, to have a family that's on the way. That's always a pressure. But the more character-based thing is, this is his dream, this is his thing. And in the apartment scene, he could never have his own thing because it was consumed by the family life that he's had. And then obviously now this is that amplified. Oh, now he's got to do the family life of being the dad to these kids, being a dad to new kids, being a husband, being the guy who's the head of the home. And since he doesn't want to do those things fully, he wants to, but he really wants to do the magazine. John C. McGinley steals that from him, so he perceives. So he gets angered by it, so he loses focus on the magazine aspect in the movie, because not only is he literally distracted from it, but he himself loses focus on it because he's so consumed with this rivalry. And that's great and all, but I really do loathe in movies like this where they go out of their way to remind you that money is a thing. Money is important. Money is essential. Money, money, money. And then halfway through the film, it enters that realm of movies where money is no concern.
I noticed that as well.
So the stakes were lowered, and Ice Cube's reasoning for being an asshole were dramatically reduced as well. Yet he's still right, by the way. I just want to bring that up.
Yeah, this is really first half of the film. There's a recurring thing of like, oh, he's being really cheap. He doesn't want to shout the money. They could just barely afford things. Well, barely. He said they could afford the house twice over. But there is, a real threat to it. It's like when he gets fined by the inspector, Chuck.
Yeah.
There is this thing of like, oh man, you could have avoided that if you just paid for it normally. But then, again, this goes back to me being in the film's wavelength. Once he, kind of moves there and he's got all these people that he's connected with working on the house, the film just kind of feels like, okay, well, the house is going to get complete. Everything's set. There isn't a how am I going to pay for this plot going on,
right.
And they really don't mention money anymore.
But it is strange because they do emphasize it so much. They keep telling us how expensive things are and how much this is going to bleed him out.
Yeah.
Every time he mentions it, they laugh like
during the portion of the film where the idea of like, is he a scam artist is up in the air. But once they drop that, they also drop, money being important.
Yeah, it's a mess. This movie's a mess. It's too back to front, a complete and utter mess. But I laughed a lot. Unlike you, Will, I did laugh a lot. Chuck is just so... I thought there was one gag that I was like, this is a Bartek type thing. I thought you, Bartek, would enjoy his putting on the different hats thing that he did early on, and that he's like, oh, you're lucky. it's in the car. And then and he does have it literally in the car. It's just like, it's a literal hat.
I mean,
now.
look,
before it was like a metaphorical hat, but now it's a literal, like, no, you're like, I literally got this hat in here.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, 2 words that we haven't said yet, unappreciated masterpiece. This is that kind of film where it failed, people weren't talking about it. It's got these wacky things in it that, like, we kind of enjoy from unappreciated masterpiece. And John C. McGinley really is, like, you know,
he's the MVP,
a very staple part of that. So even though we've honestly shit on him quite a lot in terms of, like, his relevance in the plot, but he was entertaining when taken at face value.
He is dedicated to a fault as an actor, and that's okay because at least somebody is. Ice Cube couldn't give a shit. Nia Long's here to collect the check, and the kids were left in the trailer.
Ice Cube didn't have his buddy Satch with him this film, so who was he meant to? Remember the bobblehead, Will?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So he couldn't.
He had magic.
That is like one of the most prominent things in the first one, and it's just not here.
That's another thing. Like, you know, he's doing the magazine. They mentioned Magic Johnson a million times throughout the film, so it was less of a thing of like, oh, they got him, and more like, oh, finally, there he is. Obviously, he was going to appear in this film. With
I
all
wish
those
that he was a
mentions.
main character somehow. Because sometimes they do that in movies, like, was it Uncut Gems, where they got, like, a real basketball player to be, like, a pivotal thing in that film's plot?
I would have liked it if it was a thing of, like, that he calls at the end when they're giving birth. It's like, Mara's giving birth. Like, oh, shit. And he just hangs up and you never hear him again.
Now, this is a sequel, and there are characters that existed in that previous film that are here. You said it. Nia Long was in the previous film, didn't get much to do because we had to go away from her. Now she's here full-time.
Full-time, but she had a full-time job in the previous film.
Yeah, and she was the rich one who could afford a home.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the home? Why did they move away from the home if he no longer has a shop to maintain? Like, I could understand the complaint being like, well, we had to sell the home because it was out of the way and I need a closer to my shop. But it's like, no, I sold my shop for my own online magazine and we live it made you question. If you've seen the first film, it makes you question a lot. But if you're me, you took it at face value. You go, oh, okay, this is just how life is.
I mean, Ryan, I feel like this film was so disconnected from the last one that I just didn't think about the home they had in the first one.
Yeah.
Which is quite prominent, you know, they chuck the bucket on that bloke. I mean, it looks like he dies, you know. He doesn't actually, but it looks like it.
It looks like you're covered in cum. Yeah.
I think the central...
You know, it looks like the cum kills him. Sorry, Bartek, I wanted to say that line.
There was something like that. Oh, that was the beginning of the...
That was the literal... And it was at her house.
Yes.
She lived in a proper house to have kids.
Yeah.
And the way
he kept
she
picking
was...
her up,
Yeah.
He kept picking her up from the house.
Yeah. She had a house that they apparently gave up for his apartment that couldn't maintain children.
I think the central truth behind most of the mysteries we've had here...
Is this a pre-existing script that they had to put new names on?
I have some jokey things to say about that, but no, I think the central truth for real is, you know, we've mentioned, you know, why did they switch John C. McGinley's, you know, characterization or, like, potential so radically? Why are there, like, these differing values things going on? It feels to me like every scene is taken in isolation and it was just written in a way of like, okay, what's the funny thing we can do here? Don't worry about, you know, pre-established absolutes.
Pretty much skits.
How eccentric do we need John C. McGinley to be in this scene to get this kind of laugh that we want? Don't worry about what his central, you know, truth is. It feels like, this film was scenes that were maybe written one at a time, not necessarily pieced together, but they are pieced together, but not in the way that, like, there is the coherent characterization going on.
So with the wife, why I think it's a very sexist portrayal or very unflattering portrayal is very many times in media. They always have, it's the guy doing what Ice Cube does here. And he's like this unreasonable man. Will's nodding because he's like, I know. It's like, he's this unreasonable man. He can't see the beauty of family in front of him. And it's like, and the wife is totally against him and not on his side. And I always find that an inherently bullshit trait in movies because it's like, they have no real autonomy. It's just like she's the antagonist. She's an antagonist. She's like the homemaker, the home wife. So of course she sees it as this beautiful thing. Like, she's a woman. How does she not see in any light any of the things that Ice Cube says as being valid? Like, if they're real partners, as the guy who's married myself, I would listen to my partner and she would listen to me if any of these were raised concerns. But she shuts him down all the time and doesn't even try. And that's how these movies work. Because they want you to be on Ice Cube's, like in Ice Cube's shoes, but to know that he's wrong. So she's there as basically not the nagging wife, but the oblivious wife. The wife who doesn't recognize the insanity that's going on around them, and they love it, and it's so great, and you should embrace it. And it's a thankless role. And she's pregnant, and we're waiting for that clock to finally strike at the moment in the script where it's like, now it happens, she gives birth. I found it inherently, and she's an object in the movie because she doesn't have a storyline of her own. It's not like we see the positive that she gets out of John C. McGinley firsthand. We see it through the prism of Ice Cube. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's kind of weird that, like, in the first film, you know, one of the big goals was like, oh, win her over. Mm-hmm. And then in this film, like, at the beginning of the film, that's not the point. But in the end, he kind of has to win her over again. And
we don't get to know her. Like, I can't tell you a single thing about her as a person.
I mean,
other than she is pregnant, she is a woman, she is his wife, she likes John C. Like, what's her personality?
Yeah. I think in the first one, we didn't even know what her job was, even though we kept seeing her at it.
Right? I mean, Will, how do you come at this?
How do I come at this? Let me think. But first I want to jump back because I think things I said got misunderstood from something that Bartek said, but I might have been misunderstanding what Bartek said. But let me jump back. Let me jump back.
Okay, well, the answer is Bartlomiej, first of all.
Like the film, any chance you get, you want to jump away from any connections from the previous film into what we are talking about now. Go.
I got to jump away from film one. I've got to jump away from the wife. I am the film now. The thing I want to because it's like I think. Bartek said the thing is like, oh, it sounds like we're shitting on Chuck. It's like, I want to be clear. It's like the performance of Chuck is good. It's like, it's the script and his character.
Oh yeah, I didn't think you hated it.
That is like the incoherent part.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I just needed to bring the unappreciated masterpiece thing because we hadn't said it yet.
Yeah. Now where do I come at this goodness?
Because how many times have we seen this character type? The wife who's just kind of like, honey, stop working so hard so I can live this lavish lifestyle that we're living. It's like, bitch, are you for real?
It sort of ties into something you brought up before, Ryan, and you brought up, Bartek, where it's like, in the first half of the film, he's in a very precarious financial situation because, like, having the house and fixing it all up, it's all dependent on the advance, which is very much in flux if he doesn't get this done and it doesn't look like he's getting his work done. But then that kind of goes away in the second half, at which point as that has sort of faded away, he's then becoming more unreasonable as a result.
Right.
Which is,
it sounds like it.
We're in strange country.
I just want to clarify. When you say it, that sounds like how a movie would work. Like, he's so far gone that everything's kind of dropped. But when you're watching it, it is so clearly like segment A, segment B. It's so blocked off. It never, like you said, Bartek, like it's like they film this thing in solidarity and then kind of it's bits. It's not a nice quilt that's been weaved together. It is just like blocks next to each other, and it's very artificial. But like with the family in general, you can tell like they're an annoyance to the script because they serve no purpose other than they must be there. Like they do things, but you can tell that the script is like it's begrudgingly having to do them. Like if I was a script writer. Like, if I have to embody the script writer of this, it would be like, okay, tell me the plot, script writer. And you'll go like, okay, here's the plot. Ice Cube moves to here, and John C. McGinley's this crazy guy, and then you keep explaining, and then they'll get to, and you know, John C. McGinley is teaching the kids a lesson, but I don't want to show that on screen, really. I just want to have him do the hats thing, and like every time it's like, well, what does the son get up to in the movie? I guess he folds his clothes when he moves in, and he throws them up in the air.
And he calls Nick a cool dad.
Yeah, and I guess his asthma's cured because that was a real story beat in the last movie that I don't want to put in this movie. In the movie where they moved to the country, which would totally either fuck with your asthma or do a lot of good for it, depending what type you have. And in the last movie, we saw it fucked with his asthma. So I don't want to do that. Or what's the girl up to? You mentioned this, that the girl's like, oh, part of it's like she's going to miss her friends or whatever. I know that that's kind of there, but I really didn't get that. Like when she just like, it was just a montage of like, and we're leaving now, and she just like hugs her friends goodbye and then just leaves. But I didn't really feel like there was a major loss there.
The thing there is you brought up the show aspect, but you're not acknowledging all of the tell, because that gets brought up like 4 times.
But you need to show, because it doesn't show us really her bummed about it. It just is like she's on the phone to them. Like mainly it's her trying to get on the phone to them, and they have shit reception, and then sometimes she does talk to them, and then she just, and I think too is, since she's such a snarky character, it's hard to tell if it's a genuine like sadness for her that she no longer has friends, or it's just another way to get at Nick for being a dumbass. Because at the beginning of the movie, she's doing the, I can wear makeup, Nick. I don't give a rat's ass about you. You're not my, you know, that type of thing. And she delivers it in a similar manner with the line delivery of being like, this is your fault, Nick, that we're out here and I don't have any friends. Like, it doesn't, I don't feel like she genuinely misses them. I'm just being told it. Like, again, it's the script being like, I have these characters here. What's the bare minimum, as you say, to sustain them being in the script? I guess I'll throw in some lines where she says she misses her friends.
I mean, again, yeah, it is bare minimum, but the difference is, like, I just bought it at face value. Like, oh yeah, she would miss her friends. I would miss my friends if I had to move to the country. And I didn't
buy it at face value, because I don't think they developed it in any way significantly.
Well, they didn't, but...
But that's what I'm saying. Like, and I didn't buy it. I almost forgot about that being any kind of conflict or any type of thing until you brought it up. Like, I wouldn't have brought it up if you didn't, because it was so insignificant.
I feel like it was half her lines, though, for what little she had.
And she's barely in the movie. That's the thing. Most of her lines are about the boy.
Well, that was also part, like...
Well, where do you come at it? Because you saw the previous movie as well. I mean, like, where do you fall on this when it comes to, like, the kids and the implementation and, like, what they're trying to give them?
I mean, the daughter definitely has...
more.
Maybe... That definitely is getting a little reconfigured in my head. It's like probably the most, and has like the clearest arc of like, you know, she wants to be more independent. She's getting into boys, but Nick's, you know, a bit, you know, overprotective, and he's got to learn to deal with all that. But it,
and then by the end, she gets the boy. Yeah.
It all feels a little bit out of focus, and it's just like, I mean, it's like the guts of it are all there. The skeleton of it is there, but there's kind of not much else. And so it didn't really stick with me.
It's the you know what I'm going to equate it to? It's the raccoon.
I thought the raccoon would be, because the raccoon is in the opening animated credits. I thought it would be a recurring thing, but it's just one scene.
They set
Same
up,
with the deer.
They maintain the raccoon thing for like a way where you go, well, if we talked about the movie, I do mean this, and I'm not being snarky, I'm not being vindictive or facetious. The daughter's thing is similar to the raccoon to me, where it's like they talk about it a lot and then they minorly do it and then move on. It's just like, yeah, it's there, I guess. Like, if we talked about this movie, you have to mention that the raccoon is a thing, but then you watch the movie and the raccoon's not really a thing.
Yeah, it's in the animation, you see the shit at one point, and then you get the scene.
You get promised that it'll be a big deal. You see the one scene where the raccoon doesn't actually do anything. It's him. He falls through the thing. Like, the raccoon just exists. Again, if I...
Well, it puts up its dukes, but then that doesn't get paid off.
Was it just too hard to film with the raccoon? Because there's a lot of... he gets chased or fights in animal scenes in this movie? Was it just too hard to film with the raccoon?
Again, this is ripping from the John Candy, Dan Aykroyd film Great Outdoors, where they're told raccoons are a bad thing. And John Candy is trying to figure out all these ways for the raccoons to stop eating their fucking trash and food. And he's doing all these elaborate things. And then at the end, because this Great Outdoors is like, each segment, like it's, got the segments of like them having shenanigans at the daytime and them having shenanigans at the nighttime. And then each segment kind of like each day ends with the raccoons foiling John Candy's trick of getting in the garbage, and they speak in raccoon, but we get subtitles, and it's like humorous subtitles, and that's kind of like the beat, and they keep recurring, and it's like, again, it's taking this little problem and blowing it up. Oh, we got raccoons. Oh, I guess I'll put the lid on next time. Oh, they kicked the lid off. Oh, well, I guess I'll put the lid on with like a lock thing on it, or like a latch. Oh, they got through the latch. Okay, well, I guess I'll put and it keeps going on and on and on and on. And the raccoons have an opinion on it too. Here, it's like they set up this raccoon like it's going to be this nefarious enemy for him to foil against and put its dukes up against. Like, I sincerely thought there was going to be a moment where him and the raccoon were going to have a stare down, like a proper,
we even
you
have,
did this again, you motherfucker. I can't believe you.
We even have a scene where, like, it's sort of starts like, oh, it's going to be a follow-up, and then it's like, no, it's something else. It's the bat scene where, like, they hear a noise, and it's like, oh, no, that's not the raccoon's noise, that's something else.
Because he's been paying attention to the raccoon so much.
And then that's the last thing of the raccoon ever.
What about
I mean, the raccoon can even speak.
What about this?
Like, it's a sapient.
It can only say suckers. It must be its Pokemon name or something.
Yeah. Get out.
I mean, it's not. It could be. It could say more. It's not enough of the movie
all I'm
to
saying,
know.
Guys. No, I think I said that thing as a joke, but I'm actually going to double down on that Pokemon thing. Pokemon was established as existing in this universe in the first film.
It was, because I got to hear Ice Cube say it with his mouth. I will not forgive this movie for another aspect too, which is clear setup, no payoff. What's the little boy's name?
I forget.
Good job. That's how memorable he was. Nothing to defend with him. They set up that he finds going further away from the house creepy, like in the daytime.
Yeah.
This is creepy. This is scary. And then they have the deer scene, which is, I almost like bit my tongue off having a stroke seeing the deer scene there. It was truly wild. And I was waiting for that to pay off in some way, where it's like, oh no, there's some shenanigans that happen at night, perhaps. And you see that Ice Cube does find it as scary as the little boy does, and showing that him and the little boy have a lot more in common, and maybe they have a little something around, like a little set piece out there, and maybe the boy overcomes his fear of nature. I'm putting in work, because you want all the characters in the family unit to matter, because we know that they can in movies. Paddington movies are great like that, where all the two Paddington movies, each family member has a thing, and each thing helps contribute to the main plot, so it doesn't feel as mechanical as like separate inserted tabs. This doesn't even try. So I'm sitting here pulling my hair out going, I wish the little boy, I'm writing a script for him, and the actor's thanking me from the past. Reading my script being like, I love this set piece that I'm getting, because he was the main heart of the first movie. The little boy.
Yeah.
They couldn't be bothered here.
It's such a weird thing, and we touched on this. This will keep coming up. All right, the first one, like, it's a road trip movie. This one, it's like we're all in one location, but we're like really boxed in here. It's like it's a big property, and there's, you know, a lake and tons of woods around, and a whole small town full of wacky, quirky people. But we're really, for most of this film, really corralled into
the first film,
into this house. You know,
the first film really had more country than this one.
Yeah. No. They don't stay anywhere particularly long, but they were in small towns in the countryside and the woods in the first one.
It was a road trip film, so like you only had these places for like, you know, 1 or 2 scenes at a time, and you move on. That's kind of the appeal of it.
But you had memorable aspects to them, like, oh, the truck driver thinks this, then he becomes a recurring element in the movie, and then they team up at the end because he didn't actually,
And just because it was a road trip film, like, even though nothing necessarily big happened at them, like, I still remember some of the locations. Like, oh, there was that one petrol station.
Yeah,
I
remember
had some
that
trucks
too.
in the background. There was that one stop. There was that one highway.
There was the rail. There was like the train tracks.
Yeah, the train tracks near the petrol station.
And it's so on and so forth because they're memorable. Here it's just like they don't do enough with the house to make it memorable, so you're left going, well, I'm with the characters and the characters are false. Because I think if there's anything else you guys want to touch upon before I get here, I think the closing thing I want to get to is the John C. McGinley dramatic turn and what we thought of it and how we ingested it and all of that. But is there anything else you guys want to kind of delve into before we get there? Because I feel like that's the main big thing that I have left.
I would like to sort of expand on a point you brought up with, it's like we're in this house for like the vast majority of the film, but it's like not a memorable house, whereas like Chuck's house that we only see in the background at some points, where it's like the quirky little bright blue house with a big circular window. It's like, I think I actually found that house more memorable than the house they're in for 90% of the film.
You're correct, because the house they have is a studio set where they have the big floor so that the characters can run around and have fun. Well, Chuck's house is memorable. It's like, oh, that feels like a person specifically made this house for some reason, and obviously we know that's important to him because he's all about home instead of houses. Bartek, anything from you?
Yes, it's Bartlomiej.
Okay. So, but no, anything else from you want to touch upon? Any moments?
I guess one bit of praise I can give the film is there was one scene that, had a bit of a twist to the formula that I liked. It was the scene with the squirrel where where he sees the squirrel that's like eating like a tablet or something. It's like his stomach.
It's Tums.
Yeah, his stomach's like
tummy.
hurting, so he wants to go to the toilet and he sees the squirrel like licking it. And, he was like gently talking to it, coaxing it over. And I was like, oh, okay, it's going to like
bite him.
It's
or
gonna
piss on him or something.
I was thinking shit, actually, but piss as well. It's like, how is this squirrel going to wrong him? And then it's that a bird just swoops in and takes it away. It's like, oh shit. that actually surprised me. I appreciated that. I like that scene.
Okay, so the movie made a choice to make us like John C. McGinley. Okay, well, I guess I'll ask this. Before the twist of John C. McGinley, did you like him? Like, genuinely like the dude? His character? Did you like him?
I guess.
Are you sure you're really grimacing at your own response? You could say no, because I thought he was just an asshole. A lovable asshole, but I didn't genuinely feel for him.
No, I can't say no that I didn't like him. I liked him all right, I guess.
Will?
It's Willie.
You fucking owned me.
I wanted... look, the truth is, I wanted him to be a cunt.
Thank you.
I think that would have been... I think I would have enjoyed that much more. And to be honest, like, I like the, like, oh, I need all my different hats to do my different role kind of joke. But it's like, I want to see that just keep getting more and more extreme until
I wanted him
until
to
he has like a whole,
hold on,
he like switches into 9 different roles.
Hold on a second. If the question is, did I want more from him, then yes.
More of that. I mean, we got more. We got all we could.
Yeah. The question was, did you like what you were given?
Before
the twist.
I felt the change of heart. It didn't feel like oh, we thought he was one way and then he revealed who he truly is. It felt like he was one way in the first half and he's another way in the second.
Well,
it just is.
No,
Yeah.
He's another way for that one scene, and then when he came back, he was immediately the other way again, where it almost felt like that was a manipulative tactic, because he comes back and he's like beeping the horn and he's going like full like crazy mode, and like, dude, you're at that point where you can just be like genuine with Ice Cube now, but you're doing this and it's like, why? Because that's funny. We can't go back to the sincere him now. I didn't like the guy. I'm like, well, I was rooting for him to be more of like a villain and a cunt and a bad guy and like a piece of shit. And so when they did this genuine turn, well, not genuine, like this turn of him being a genuine sweet guy who had a tragedy about his dead wife, obviously I saw it for the ripoff it was of Planes, Trains, and they didn't earn it, so it offended me on that level.
I also noticed,
but
Planes,
it
Trains.
offended me because I was like, you're a liar to the film. Like, you're a liar. You are now trying to make it that John C. McGinley was just this innocent little flower of a character. Chuck was this innocent flower that we shouldn't have been looking at negatively because he's got a dead wife. Fuck you.
Yeah, why did he have to lie about that too, is a thing.
Yeah.
That's the really big thing for me.
Because he directly lies. John Candy misleads. He doesn't directly lie in that film. Like, you're led to believe, but he doesn't actually say, my wife is in China right now touring and she's alive. He just says, like, I haven't seen her, I have a wife, haven't seen her in ages, like I don't, he even says I don't have a home. I was like, I haven't been home in years is what he says. And it's like, he's not lying, but you're misled. He's like, figure of speech. But it is true that he hasn't been home in years, but it's also true of figure of speech. Here it's like, he does directly lie. And so it's like, why? Because we want the script to hit you here now. The film itself was lying to me because, like you, Will, I was like, this guy's a cunt. I want him to be more of a cunt. And now the movie's saying, guys, he was never a cunt. He was never a bad man. Dead wife, you cry now. Tears form and your perception of him has changed. Yeah. No, it didn't. It was lies and manipulative and false. And I laughed when you had the scene where the neighbor who's been a non-character goes, hey, you're feeling pretty good about treating that guy like shit. Well, you didn't know this tragic thing, did you now? That scene was hilarious. Like that neighbor, everything about it was just... It was like Tommy was so level.
First he gave us a sturgeon, then he gave us a T-bomb.
T-bomb, truth bomb. But that felt like a Tommy Wiseau trick. Where it's like, now I am telling you this thing, now you must feel. We are best friends. I have sad backstory. I feel so betrayed. Everyone betrays me. I'm fed up with this world.
World.
I know. I'm fed up with this world. What was your reaction to this, Will, when it first happened? Like, what was your gut reaction to the scene?
Just kind of a shrug. It's like, it's not working. It's just like, not even like, oh, I can't believe the film lied to me like this. It was just, it's just not working.
Arnold Schwarzenegger will.
You didn't put the work in. It's like,
yeah.
For me, it was a thing of like, oh, okay, well, at least give me a bare minimum excuse, but they didn't give me that. the excuse being like, oh, why did he lie? Oh, no, okay.
As a fan of what this is ripping off, how do you feel about that? Like, not just it ripping it off, but how it executes it, the differences between the two of Planes, Trains, and this. Because it's the same idea, but done in drastically different ways and different points in the movie, too. How do you feel about that, Bartek?
I mean, that film's not as close to my heart as it is for you, so I'm not going to say that I was offended by it or anything, but I did say earlier that I did think of that film in many ways for this one, and simply put, that film did it much better, and it worked.
Yeah, but, like, how did it do it better for you? Like, because it's like, this movie, we agree, it does this moment is a failure, but it's the same idea. So how come this idea's execution fails here and succeeds elsewhere?
Well, I think you already brought up the whole thing of the film. That film didn't lie. It misled. It was believable when that came to be. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I haven't seen it as many times as you have, but I just remember that in that film, it worked because it made sense.
Right.
Based on everything that we had with that character previously.
Yeah, and this didn't make sense specifically for you because he does directly lie, and you were waiting for them to explain why he did.
Even with my incredibly lower standards, because I'd seen the rest of the film, I saw that things weren't adding up. It was like, okay, give me at least the bare minimum so I could say that okay, you had something, but it didn't have that.
One last question before I ask if you guys recommend this, and this is me, maybe face blindness, maybe I just didn't clock it. Who was the woman Chuck was with at the end of the film? When it cut away to him at his house and he's got his arm around this woman and it's like he's got a new love. Who was that?
I also wondered that.
I don't think that had come up before. I don't know.
Did you guys react like that? Because I remember that vividly from my high school experience. It's like, and then he's with this woman and I'm sure I'll see her on the next watch round. Who was that?
It was such a brief thing that I do definitely remember being like, oh, who's that? But then once it cut away...
That's his conclusion. He's one of the main characters, Chuck. That's his conclusion, is him quick shot from far away with a woman that we kind of don't know, evidently. That's his conclusion.
Yeah, it's weird that he was put into the same frame as someone we don't know.
With his arm wrapped around her waist, yeah.
I will completely admit it's possible it does come up in the movie and I just missed it. But I don't know who that was.
Thank you. I was going crazy last night because I was thinking, who is this? Is this a townsperson we've met? Is this me not looking at it correctly? And maybe it's that neighbor's wife that gave the news about the death because he had a wife. And maybe it's just like Chuck's being overly touchy again and I'm misconstruing. But like that shot visually kind of communicated to me that everyone's happy now. Look, Chuck now even has a girl because his sadness was that he lost his wife, and now he's happy because now he has a girl. And I really thought I would know who it was, and one of you would also know. Okay. And I'm so sorry.
So you walked into this film with that question in mind. Okay, that's why it's such a big deal.
But it's also a big deal because.
No, I'm not downplaying that, but it just makes more because I remember that experience, but I forgot about it until you brought it up.
Yeah,
is the thing,
which is weird for a conclusion of one of the main characters of the story that you forget.
Yeah.
To elaborate on the emotion of the Chuck twist, the chist, it's like, it's like to compare it to like the previous film. And of all the things to say about Are We There Yet, I wouldn't say it's like a hard-hitting, heartfelt film. Mm-hmm. But it's like even like the big emotions of that of like, the kids go to the estranged biological father's house and he's got another family and he's moved on and it's like, that's sad, It's like that's not exactly like, my heart is breaking, but it
was set up.
At least it's the bare minimum.
Like it's set
at
up.
least it's something.
Did you guys like the scene in this film where they were gonna give birth and he was on the phone and giving the instructions? And then towards the end of it, like the reception broke, and it's like, oh no, how are they going to communicate? But it doesn't matter because he was already at the house.
Well, the joke is they're only at their location do they have bad reception. Everyone else has good reception, which was set up earlier. What I couldn't take seriously was we're having this scene, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He puts on his little walking outfit with the short shorts. And we have this one shot where we're seeing him from behind, and I just saw John C. McGinley's butt cheeks, just his butt cheeks.
Did you say thank you?
And I said, John, you're ripped. We know it. Stop showing us your buns.
This film is very horny for John.
That's what I mean. There's also like this uncomfortable nature where
very
it's like,
horny for John.
Where they use these shots of like he's a really ripped guy, and I'm like I said, like I wasn't there for it, but like I mentioned like all the time about Wild Hogs.
He was a cop, right?
He's like this weird, sexy, buff cop, and there's this uneasy, and that's a family film. That's made by Disney. It's a family film for children, and yet it's weirdly not. And that's where like I link him in both films in a way where if you told me they were the same character, I would believe you because they like overly friendly and the film weirdly sexualizes them, yet you go, no, that can't be right. This is a family film. Why would they be sexualizing Dr. Cox from Scrubs in this way.
If you have a Dr. Cox fetish,
This film meets it.
Who
for
am
you.
I of you? It's like, you're the audience for this film.
You're the audience for this.
If you're horny for Dr. Cox, it's like, this is your movie.
This is your movie.
This is your moment in the sun.
This is your moment, baby. You get a lot of buff, shirtless John C. in this.
Well, the Wild Hogs was a bit of a midlife crisis film, so it had to be a bit more mature there.
Yeah, it had to be, and he was the weird gay cop in that movie. All right, enough. We're done now. The question is answered.
With the animation, like at the end, you know how they brought it back for the credits. I like to imagine that like the director was like, "Okay, Ice Cube, for the end of the film, you have to bow." And he's like, "I'm not doing that." So they're like, "Oh shit, we have to animate him." But then the rest of the cast might have said something like, "Oh, we'll bow." It's like, no, it'll be weird if if he's the only one animated. We have to animate all of you.
I was scared when he went under the water and had CGI eyes. That was very unsettling.
You know who else was afraid underwater?
The fish.
The fish. I laughed at that. That was funny.
I don't recommend this movie. I don't. It's weird, but I found it personally too frustrating. It's like, as bizarre as it is, I just can't tolerate when a movie tries to forcefully earn its emotional twists like this. It's false. I just get so angry that the film thinks that Ice Cube is wrong, and I get so angry that it as a film is, like, to me, lying. I don't tolerate it very easily. Willie, where do you land? Recommend? No? Yes?
I mean, I think I can try and sum it up a bit succinctly. It's like, this film is... Actually, I can't do it succinctly, not at all. This film is weird, and even after all this time in this discussion, I still haven't come to grips with how it was weird, but it's not really very interesting weird. And I think sort of the best way to sum it up is I don't recommend this because it doesn't even reach the heights of Are We There Yet? And that is not asking much.
Are We There Yet was better, yeah.
Bartek?
I think I also don't recommend it, but not all that firmly, because like we said, John C. McGinley very much is an unappreciated masterpiece. His performance in this.
Yeah.
Well, I said the Chuck character played by John C. McGinley very much is unappreciated masterpieces. Quality.
It's what we love.
Yeah. Even though I'm saying like, I guess no, if you do watch it, you at least do get that. So a not so firm no would be mine, I guess.
So, Bartek, it is
Bartlomiej.
your time. You didn't correct me several other times, so it's too late. What do you recommend for the next episode of the pod?
I am recommending a film from, I believe, the same year, 2007.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Go on.
Sorry.
That is the era. That is the era.
It's Are We Done Yet Again?
No, it's okay. This one's from, I think, an acclaimed director. I'm recommending The Darjeeling Limited.
I was right with my response. Okay, Will, you won't be back for the Darjeeling Limited, but I'm sure you'll listen along to our takes on that. Bartek, thank you for recommending that, people. You should make sure to check out that Wes Anderson classic with Owen Wilson.
Oh, and on top of that, it's Bartlomiej.
Oh, he's in it too? Awesome. And we can be found on your social media of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents, posting on there, interacting on there. So feel free to follow us if you want to contact us more directly. Where can people do that, Bartek?
There are many places on top of the social media. We have a email address called spitandpolished@gmail.com.
That's what we called it.
Yep, you can email us on that directly. We check it sometimes, and we respond always.
I check it regularly, so
Thank you
go.
so much for having me, listening people.
Thank you for joining us yet again.
You're welcome, and congratulations on coming on.
Just the way you said that came across really weird.
Well, I just that he's.
It's because we're talking about Are We Done Yet? And it's always weirdly sexual.
I just kind of was thrown off by him thanking us first. So I was just okay.
Thank you for coming on. All right. That's enough. We're done now, people.
Bye-bye.
Did they actually say "Are we done yet" in the movie? I can't remember.
It's his magazine title at the end, right?
Yes, but why?
To be fair, it's a bit more firm than "Are we there yet?" where their line was said like once and like kind of throwaway.
This one was missing the little boy becoming a scary animatronic with his jaw unhinged. This film lacked that.
Man, I'm really nostalgic for that first film.
And lacked a talking bobblehead voice by Tracy Morgan.
And more shonen anime references.
But it did have Magic Johnson.
Yu-Gi-Oh!
No, you know what it should have had was, because this film, was inspired by some other film, I would like to imagine that, like, the writers for this one are different. They haven't seen the first one. They should have had a thing where, like, Ice Cube's a big Yu-Gi-Oh player, and John C. McGinley, one of the way he one-ups him is that he has a better deck.
Not only does he have not only that. Ice Cube's like, kids, look at this. I got a shiny, glittery card, right? And then John Caesar's like, really? Well, look what I got. And he's got one of those big mechanical arm things that they had in those. I had one of those.
He's got
the drill disc.
He's got one of the items with the Egyptian eye, the Millennium items.
Johnson McGinley has a Millennium item.
He's got Bakura's one. He's got the
Millennium ring.
He's got the ring.
Man, you can't beat my black magician deck.
He's like possessed by like the ghost of like a 5,000-year-old Egyptian black sorcerer or something.
He was a thief, thank you very much.
Okay, sorry. I haven't seen all of Yu-Gi-Oh! I forgot what Bakura
just
was.
to cover my ass, it was called Black Magician in Japan. It's Dark Magician in the West.
Okay.
One other thing.
Oh, yeah.
You kept bringing up Green Acres throughout this episode, and in my head, something was ringing in my head like...
The theme song's very catchy.
That was it. I've heard a certain person sing that theme song.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump.
It is true. He did sing it.
Green Acres is the place to be. That was a funny video.